A day of mourning is being observed in the Ukrainian capital Kyiv, remembering those who died in Thursday's Russian air attacks. It's now known that at least 23 people, including 4 children, were killed. Ukrainian forces said Russia had fired almost 600 drones and more than 30 ballistic and cruise missiles. The White House says President Trump wasn't happy, but wasn't surprised by this latest Russian bombardment. The recovery operation is continuing at the block of flats that was hit by a missile and saw the majority of the casualties. I speak to our correspondent in Kyiv, Katie Watson. And Katie, just the sheer scale of this attack is becoming apparent.
Yeah, so the recovery operation at that block of flats that you mentioned that saw 22 people die of the 23 who died in that massive airstrike earlier on Thursday morning, that has now finished. There are still 8 people missing. But I think, people here are still reeling from what happened in the early hours of Thursday morning. President Zelensky has once again called for strength, not just words, from allies to try and bring an end to this war. And as you said, it is a day of mourning. Behind me, you can see the Ukrainian flag is flying at half-mast as people still continue making sure that buildings are secured after windows were blasted out, and that the recovery here in Kyiv continues.
We're just hearing, Katie, that has just come through that the search and rescue operations have now ended after about 30 hours. Tell us about the reaction that there has been to this attack. There's been international condemnation, particularly from members of the European Union.
Yeah, so the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, said she was outraged by the attack. Sir Keir Starmer called the attacks senseless. So there's been diplomatic outcry. Of course, the EU delegation building here in Kyiv was damaged, as was the British Council building. So, a resounding criticism of what happened at these Russian attacks. But on the ground, speaking to those residents and neighbours watching the recovery operation yesterday after a missile hit a low-rise residential building, there was a lot of disbelief, a lot of shock. People telling me that they see this on television. They never think it would happen to them, but it does. One lady told me of just the cruelty of it, that these drones and these missiles, there was a barrage of them coming in simultaneously from different directions, and it was just incomprehensible, very difficult to try and get their head around what had happened. So I think people were very much in shock, trying to get an understanding of exactly, of course, what this means for potential peace. Because, of course, Ukrainians here, I think, were wary of whether any peace could come from this flurry of diplomatic talks. There was optimism, but now that's been undermined by what we saw with those attacks early yesterday morning.
Katie, thank you very much. Katie Watson in Kyiv.